before Christ dies on the cross, Hades is going to include not just evil people, but also the souls of the just, and also the souls in purgatory. Hey everyone, it's Clem Harrold with the St. Paul Center. Today we're going to talk about the question of whether Jesus really descended into hell, which I think is a pretty interesting question. I remember actually one Thanksgiving talking about this with some friends, and the question came up. It's like, okay, in the Apostles' Creed, we say that Christ descended into hell. And we were saying, like, does he actually? I mean, what does that mean? And is the hell that we're talking about there the same kind of hell that we would talk about today? So at the time, I did not know the answer to that question, and so it kind of motivated me to go and look into it some more. And I think the way to understand the question is that the use of the word hell has kind of changed over time. So we've got to understand that Christ's coming and Christ's death on the cross actually completely changes the way that heaven, purgatory, and hell, the way that they kind of operate. It changes the very nature of reality. That, is to be expected. So before Christ's salvific work on the cross, what does hell mean? Well, in the Bible, you've got a couple of different words. So you have the word Hades, which is the Greek, and then you have the Hebrew Sheol, and that's a word that's kind of a generic word for the realm of the dead. So if you think of like Matthew 16, when Jesus says to St. Peter that you're the rock on which I'm going to found my church, and the gates of Hades will not prevail against it. And in English translations, sometimes you're going to hear Hades, sometimes you're going to hear hell. So it's kind of Hades or Sheol. It's a word that kind of, it's quite a rich word, and sometimes it's translated as hell, but it can also mean something more generic, like the realm of the dead. And the reason for that is that before Christ dies on the cross, Hades is going to include not just evil people, but also the souls of the just, and also the souls in purgatory. So as Catholics, we believe that Hades, before Christ, is going to include the place of the damned. So it's going to include those souls who are who died in a state of being an enemy with God and who are destined for eternal damnation. But it's also going to include souls in purgatory, and it's going to include souls in what's sometimes known as the limbo of the patriarchs, or Abraham's bosom. So those are the souls of the just who are waiting to get into heaven, but they can't get into heaven because Christ's work on the cross hasn't happened yet. Okay, that's Hades. And it's important to understand this other word that you get in the New Testament, Gehenna. So Gehenna is referring to the kind of the permanent part of Hades. So again, we said Hades has these three different parts. The part of the damned is what Gehenna is referring to. So what is Gehenna? I mean, Jesus will sometimes talk in the Gospels about Gehenna as being the place where there's the fire that doesn't go out. And part of the reason why he uses that imagery is that Gehenna was a literal place. It was a valley outside of Jerusalem. So Jerusalem, this big city on a hill, it's surrounded by, I think it's 4 valleys. One of the valleys is like the Kidron. So you might know from, Jesus after the Last Supper crosses the Kidron Valley, goes to the Garden of Gethsemane. But one of the other valleys, rather less pleasant, is the valley of Gehenna, which was basically a giant garbage dump. And so it was really a place where flames never go out because it was burning like night and day. It was where the whole city sent their sewage, their refuse, their garbage. Gehenna is the word that's used to apply to that permanent part of Hades. But we have to understand that, again, before Christ comes, Hades is also going to include souls in purgatory who are being purified, and it's going to include the souls of the just in Abraham's bosom, in the kind of heavenly waiting room. They're waiting for Christ to come. Okay, so does Christ descend into hell? Yes, he descends into hell in the sense that he descends into Hades. So again, this word Hades can mean multiple things. That is what Jesus descends into. So he dies on the cross. He has 3 days in the tomb. During that time, he descends into Hades. What's he doing there? Why is he there? He's there to liberate the souls who are in Abraham's bosom, the souls who are in that kind of perpetual waiting room. And he turns that perpetual waiting room into a real pathway into heaven. That's the effect of the cross, is it opens up heaven for Abraham, for Isaac, for Jacob, for all of these just souls, and for you and me. That's the amazing thing. And that's the power of Christ descending into hell, like we say in the Creed, is he's going down there into the realm of the dead, and he's liberating them, he's emancipating them, he's freeing them up for the joys of heaven. Does Jesus go into Gehenna? It's a question that has been debated in the 20th century, but generally speaking, the view of the tradition is no. Jesus doesn't go into Gehenna. Why? Because like we said, that's the place of the souls that have permanently chosen to set themselves against God. So he doesn't have any business going down into Gehenna because those are people that don't want anything to do with him. And so he doesn't go to the Gehenna part of hell. He instead goes to the parts of hell or Hades, which included the souls who were ultimately desiring friendship with God. That's pretty much it. What do we do with the word hell today? Well, because of Christ's coming, we still have purgatory, of course, which is kind of its own thing now. We no longer have kind of Abraham's bosom in the same way. It's now like if you die in a state of grace, you either go straight to heaven or you go to purgatory for a time. And so now we're left with the Gehenna part of Hades. That's kind of just what we refer to now by the English word hell. So again, it's a slightly confusing topic, but when we say that Christ descended into hell, we're not saying he descended into hell as we understand it today. We're saying he descended into the hell, meaning Hades, which included both the just and the unjust. But because of what he did on the cross, the unjust, they still face eternal damnation because of the choices they made in this life, but the just have now been allowed access to heaven. That's what Christ did for us. If you have any questions on this topic, if you want to agree or disagree or just give some feedback, you can do so in the comments below. Thanks a lot for listening, and God bless.